I can probably get $4 million for it, maybe more." Those words spoken by my son Bradley in what he thought was a private conversation cut through me like a blade. I stood frozen in the hallway outside my sunroom, my morning tea cooling in my hands as he continued speaking to someone on the phone. "Yeah, it's prime beachfront. The old house would have to be demolished, of course. The real value is the land." "No, that won't be a problem. My mother's getting too old to take care of herself. I'm already working on having her move in with us or into Sunshine Meadows. Either way, I'll have power of attorney soon." My hands trembled so violently that hot tea spilled over my fingers, but I barely felt the burn. $4 million. For my home. The house Howard and I had purchased for just $180,000 back in 1983, the house where we'd raised our children, where we'd planned to grow old together before cancer took him from me 5 years ago. And the old house would have to be demolished. I am Vivian Keller, 72 years old, a retired elementary school teacher, and apparently, according to my son, too decrepit to live independently in my own home. The home I've lived in for 40 years. The home where I still make my own meals, tend my own garden, and walk 3 miles along the beach every morning at sunrise. I backed away silently, my heart thundering in my chest. Bradley was planning to sell my house, my home out from under me, and he'd been systematically working to convince me I was no longer capable of caring for myself. Mom's getting so forgetful. He'd told his sister Caroline on the phone last month, not realizing I could hear him from the kitchen. I found her wandering on the beach at 6 a.m. Who knows what could happen to her out there alone? I hadn't been wandering. I'd been on my daily walk, the same one I'd taken for decades, the same one my doctor encouraged to keep my heart healthy and my joints mobile. But that was just the beginning. Over the past few months, Bradley and his wife Jennifer had been pointing out every minor slip of memory, every small household task that hadn't been completed to their standards. The forgotten dentist appointment, the dusty top shelf I could no longer reach easily, the slightly overgrown corner of the garden. After a week of rain had kept me indoors. All normal parts of life reframed as evidence of my inevitable decline. I'd begun to doubt myself. Maybe they were right. Maybe living alone in this big house was becoming too much for me. Bradley had seemed so concerned, so caring. Now I understood why. I made my way to the porch swing Howard had built my sanctuary overlooking the Gulf of Mexico. The realization of Bradley's true motives crystallized something inside me, not just hurt, but a steely determination I hadn't felt in years. This house wasn't just wood and glass and concrete. It was the heartbeat of my life with Howard. We'd purchased this property when Gulf Shores was just a sleepy beach town before the high-rises and tourist developments had sprung up around us. Howard, an engineering professor at the university, had designed many of the renovations himself. We'd raised Bradley and Caroline here, teaching them to swim in these waters, to respect the power of the ocean and the delicacy of the dune ecosystem. Howard's last coherent words to me before the cancer medications took his clarity had been about this house. "Don't let them rush you out of here. Viv, this is where we lived. This is where I'll always be." And now Bradley, our son, who Howard had taught to hammer his first nail on this very porch, was planning to demolish it all for a payday. The shock began to transform into anger. I took deep breaths, watching the waves roll in, thinking through what I'd learned. Bradley needed to believe. I hadn't overheard him. I needed time to figure out exactly what he was planning and how to protect myself. I wiped my eyes, straightened my shoulders, and went inside just as Bradley emerged from the sunroom, his phone call apparently finished. "Mom, there you are. I was just about to look for you." His smile seemed genuine, and that was perhaps what hurt the most. How long had he been lying to my face? "Just enjoying the morning air," I said, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. "Would you like some breakfast?" "Sure, that would be great." "Then maybe we can talk about some of those assisted living brochures I brought." Sunshine Meadows has an opening in their Beachview apartments, We should jump on it before someone else takes it. I nodded, turning toward the kitchen so he wouldn't see my expression. Let me make you some eggs first. As I cracked eggs into a bowl, I thought about the Beachview apartments at Sunshine Meadows. I'd visited a friend there once. The beach view was a distant strip of blue, if you stood on a chair and craned your neck out the third-floor window. Not quite the same as opening my back door and feeling sand between my toes within 15 steps. Jennifer and I were thinking, Bradley continued from the breakfast nook, scrolling through his phone. Maybe this weekend we could go through some of your things. Start deciding what you want to keep when you downsize. It's never too early to begin that process. My hand tightened around the whisk downsize, as if the life Howard and I had built was just clutter to be sorted and discarded. That's thoughtful, I managed. But I have my book club on Saturday and Sunday. I'm helping with the coastal cleanup event. Bradley frowned slightly. Mom, you know you shouldn't be out in that heat for hours picking up trash. That's what I'm talking about. You're not considering your limitations. I set his eggs in front of him, perfectly cooked, the way he'd liked them since childhood. I'll be sure to take breaks and stay hydrated. I said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. I've been doing these cleanups for 30 years. Bradley, I know how to take care of myself. After Bradley left that afternoon, promising to return the following weekend with more options for my future, I sat down at Howard's old desk in the study. My hands were steady now, my mind clear. First, I called my friend Grace Patterson, who lived 3 doors down. Grace and I had been friends since our children were in preschool together, and she'd been my rock after Howard died. Grace, I need your help, I said when she answered, and I need your absolute discretion. Vivian, what's wrong? Are you okay? Grace's concern was immediate. I'm fine, but I've discovered something disturbing. Can you come over? And if you see Bradley's car here anytime, don't mention anything about meeting with me. An hour later, Grace sat across from me in the study, her face a storm cloud, as I recounted what I'd overheard. That scheming little... Grace didn't finish the sentence. But her expression said it all. What are you going to do? I'm not sure yet, but I need to understand exactly what Bradley has been planning. He mentioned power of attorney. Has he been talking to anyone else about me? Making it seem like I'm not competent? Grace hesitated, which told me everything. He has, hasn't he? I pressed. He mentioned to Richard at the community center that he was worried about you living alone. Said he'd found you confused several times. Richard asked if I'd noticed anything, and I told him you were sharp as ever. Grace reached for my hand. Vivian, if he's trying to build a case that you're not competent, then I need to build a stronger case that I finished for her, and I need to protect my home before he can make any moves. Grace squeezed my hand. My niece Diana is an elder law attorney in Mobile. Let me call her for you. While Grace made the call, I went to my bedroom and retrieved my important documents from the fireproof safe Howard had installed years ago. Our wills, the house deed, financial records. Everything was in order. But I realized with a chill that Bradley, as my son, could potentially petition for guardianship if he could convince a court I was incapacitated. When I returned to the study, Grace was just hanging up. Diana can see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. She says not to sign anything. Bradley gives you no matter what he says, it is. I won't. I promised. But there's something else I need to do first. I picked up the phone and called my daughter Caroline in California. Caroline was a professor of literature at Berkeley, brilliant and compassionate, but so busy with her academic career that our communications had become less frequent over the years. Still, whenever we spoke, the connection was as strong as ever. Mom, what a nice surprise. Caroline answered, her voice warm despite the miles between us. Caroline, honey, I need to talk to you about something important. I said, keeping my voice level. It's about Bradley. By the time I finished explaining, Caroline's academic composure had given way to outrage. I'm coming to Florida, she stated flatly. I'll book a flight tonight. "You don't need to do that," I began. "Yes, I do. If Bradley thinks he can pull this off, he's sorely mistaken. Besides, Emma is at Gulf Shores University. I've been meaning to visit her anyway." Emma, my granddaughter. Caroline's daughter was studying marine biology at the local university. She often stopped by for dinner or just to sit on the beach with me. A thought struck me. Caroline, has Emma mentioned anything about Bradley asking her questions about me, about my mental state, or how I'm managing? There was a pause, not to me directly, but now that you mention it, she did say something about Bradley asking her to keep an eye on you and report back if she noticed anything concerning. "I see," I said quietly. Another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. "Caroline, before you come, there's something I need you to do for me." The next day, I met with Diana Chen Grace's niece in her sleek office overlooking Mobile Bay. Diana was in her late 50s with a sharp mind and sharper eyes that missed nothing. "Mrs. Keller, based on what you've told me, I'm concerned that your son may be laying groundwork for a guardianship petition," she said after I'd explained the situation. "The good news is, there are several steps we can take immediately to protect your autonomy and your property." For the next hour, Diana outlined a comprehensive plan. First, she recommended I undergo a thorough cognitive and physical assessment with specialists she trusted, creating an official record of my competence. Next, we discussed setting up an irrevocable trust for my home and other assets with Caroline as trustee, which would make it impossible for Bradley to force a sale, even if he somehow gained power of attorney. "What about recording devices?" I asked. "I want to document any conversations where Bradley or Jennifer try to manipulate me." Diana nodded. "Florida is a two-party consent state for recordings, which complicates things. However, you can install security cameras in common areas of your home with visible signage about recording. Anyone entering is then deemed to have consented." By the time I left Diana's office, I had a clear path forward. I stopped at an electronics store on the way home and purchased a security system with cameras for the living room, kitchen, and entryways. I also picked up a new cell phone with a better recording app and more storage than my old one. When I arrived home, Emma's car was in the driveway. My granddaughter was waiting on the porch swing, her long dark hair blowing in the sea breeze. "Grandma," she called, running to help me with my packages. "Mom called and said you needed to talk to me. What's going on? Are you okay?" I looked at my beautiful granddaughter, so much like Caroline at that age, and decided on complete honesty. "Not exactly, sweetheart. Let's sit down. I need to ask you some questions about Uncle Bradley." Emma's expression shifted from concern to guilt as I gently questioned her. Yes, Bradley had asked her to report back on my activities under the guise of concern for my well-being. Yes, he'd specifically asked her to note any memory lapses or confusion. And yes, he'd mentioned that, when the time comes, he'd make sure Emma received something meaningful from my estate. "I didn't think much of it at the time." Emma said, her voice small. "He made it sound like he was just looking out for you. But now that you're asking, it does seem weird." "Did he ask you to look for anything specific or to check anywhere in the house?" Emma hesitated. "He asked if I knew where you keep important documents, said he was updating his files as your eventual executor." She made air quotes around the last words. I told him I had no idea. I hugged her tightly. "Thank you for being honest with me. I need your help now, but it has to stay between us. Your mom knows and she's coming to visit soon, but Bradley can't know that we've spoken about this." Emma's eyes flashed with the Keller determination I recognized from both my children when they were in their righteous phase. "Whatever you need, Grandma. Nobody messes with my favorite person." Over the next week, I put Diana's plan into motion. I had comprehensive neurological and physical examinations, emerging with glowing reports about my cognitive function and overall health. Exceptional for any age. The neurologist had written, Emma helped me install the security cameras, placing small but visible signs about recording in progress near each one. She also helped me organize my documents and create digital backups of everything important. Caroline called daily, updating me on her travel plans and the legal research she was conducting on her end. She'd spoken with Diana and was fully on board with the trust arrangement we were creating. Meanwhile, I made a point of being highly visible in the community. I attended every scheduled activity at the community center, had coffee with friends at the local cafe, and even gave an interview to the local paper about the upcoming coastal cleanup event I was helping to coordinate. If Bradley was trying to paint me as a confused old woman, I would make sure everyone in Gulf Shores knew otherwise. I was watering my garden when Emma came racing up the beach path, her face flushed with urgency. "Grandma, I just saw Uncle Bradley at Seaside Mall." He was talking to a man in an expensive suit, and they were looking at what looked like plans or blueprints. I couldn't get close enough to hear everything, but I definitely heard your address and something about luxury condos. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "Did he see you?" "No, I ducked behind a planter. But Grandma?" It looked like they were making plans. Actual construction plans. I nodded slowly. "Thank you for telling me. When is your mom arriving?" "Her flight gets in tomorrow afternoon. I'm picking her up." "Good. Let's not mention this when Bradley calls for his daily check-in. Let him think everything is proceeding according to his plan." Sure enough, Bradley called that evening, his voice solicitous as always. "Just checking in on you, Mom. Jennifer and I are coming down Friday. We've got some great news about Sunshine Meadows. They're willing to hold that Beachview apartment if we put down a deposit this weekend." "How thoughtful of you to arrange that." I said, my voice sweet, but my free hand clenched into a fist. "I'll be here all weekend." "Great. Oh, and I'll bring some legal paperwork for you to look over. Just routine stuff to make sure all your affairs are in order. Nothing to worry about." "I look forward to it," I said, and was proud of how convincing I sounded. After hanging up, I called Diana. "He's making his move this weekend." I told her, "Are the trust documents ready?" "Yes, I'll messenger them over tomorrow for you to review. Once you and Caroline sign them, the house will be protected in the irrevocable trust. Bradley won't be able to touch it even with power of attorney." "And you're sure this will work?" "Mrs. Keller, I specialize in protecting elderly clients from exactly this kind of financial exploitation, even when it comes from family. The law is on your side here, especially given your documented cognitive competence and the clear paper trail we're establishing of Bradley's intentions." I thanked her and hung up, then walked out to the beach as the sun was setting. The waves had always brought me peace, even in the darkest days after Howard's passing. I needed that peace now to quiet the hurt and betrayal that threatened to overwhelm my resolve. How had my bright, kind little boy turned into this calculating man? Where had I gone wrong as a mother? Or was it simply greed, a character flaw I'd somehow missed as he grew up? I remembered Bradley as a child, building sandcastles on this very beach, Howard patiently showing him how to drip wet sand to create perfect towers. I remembered his high school graduation, how proud we'd been when he announced he wanted to follow Howard into engineering. The joy in his eyes when he'd introduced us to Jennifer, the birth of their children. Somewhere along the way, something had changed. Perhaps it was the financial pressure from his failing construction business. I knew he'd made some risky investments that hadn't panned out. Perhaps it was simple opportunism, seeing the rising property values in Gulf Shores and calculating what my beachfront lot could be worth. Whatever the reason, I couldn't let sentiment cloud my judgment now. Howard wouldn't have wanted that. "You always were the backbone of this family, Viv," he told me during his final weeks. "Don't let anyone forget it." I wouldn't. Caroline arrived the next day, a whirlwind of efficiency and righteous anger. After hugging me fiercely, she immediately began reviewing the trust documents Diana had sent over. "This is excellent work," she said, nodding, as she flipped through the pages. "Once this is executed, Bradley won't be able to touch the house, even if. And this is a big if he somehow convinced a court you weren't competent. And if he tries to contest it." I asked, Diana's built in several protections against that. Besides, we have documentation of your full mental capacity, plus we're going to get evidence of his true intentions. Emma, who had taken a few days off from her classes to help, was setting up additional security cameras in discrete locations. The visible ones are the legal ones, she explained, but these hidden ones are our backup just in case. I wasn't entirely comfortable with the cloak and dagger approach, but I understood the necessity. This was no longer about family disagreement. This was about protecting what was mine from someone who had proven he couldn't be trusted. The three of us spent Thursday finalizing preparations. Diana came by to witness our signatures on the trust documents, officially transferring my home into an irrevocable trust with Caroline as trustee. I maintained the right to live in the home for the rest of my life while protecting it from any attempts to force a sale. This is just a formality, Diana assured me. With your cognitive assessments and this trust in place, Bradley has no legal path to force you from your home. The emotional path was another matter entirely. Despite my anger, the thought of confronting my son of laying bare his betrayal and greed filled me with a profound sadness. Are you sure you want to be here when he arrives tomorrow? Caroline asked gently, seeing my expression. Emma and I could handle it. I shook my head firmly. This is my home, my life, and Bradley is still my son. No matter what he's done, I need to face him myself. That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about the blueprints. Emma had seen luxury condos where my home now stood. Had Bradley already taken deposits from buyers, made promises to developers? How far had this scheme progressed while I remained oblivious? Trusting in my son's concern, I rose before dawn and walked along the shoreline as the sun crept above the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. This daily ritual had sustained me through Howard's illness, through grief, through loneliness, the constancy of the waves, the endless cycle of tides. They reminded me that life continued, that pain ebbed and flowed, but never completely overcame you if you kept moving forward. When I returned to the house, Caroline and Emma were in the kitchen making breakfast. Emma had set up the final cameras, testing the feeds on her laptop. Everything's working, she reported. Audio and video are crystal clear. Caroline handed me a cup of coffee. Are you ready for this? I took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. Bradley and Jennifer arrived at noon, all smiles and false cheer. Bradley was carrying a sleek briefcase I'd never seen before, and Jennifer had a gift bag with tissue paper sprouting from the top. Mom, you look great, Bradley said, embracing me with what seemed like genuine affection. It was almost enough to make me doubt what I'd heard, what I knew. Almost. We brought you something, Jennifer said, handing me the gift bag. Inside was a framed photo of Sunshine Meadows Retirement Community with a ribbon across the corner saying, "Your new home." Isn't it beautiful? Jennifer gushed. We took a tour last week. The apartments are so modern, and there's a lovely community room where you can play bridge with other residents. I forced a smile. How thoughtful. And the best part, Bradley added, is that they have full-time nursing staff, so if you ever had a fall or an emergency, help would be right there. Speaking of help, I said mildly, Caroline arrived yesterday. She's just down at the beach with Emma. They should be back soon. Bradley's expression flickered surprise, then concern. Caroline's here. You didn't mention she was visiting. It was a bit last minute. She wanted to see Emma, and of course me. Jennifer and Bradley exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. Well, that's nice, Bradley said, recovering. But actually, Mom, I was hoping we could go over some paperwork before lunch. Just some simple legal documents to update your affairs. He was already opening his briefcase, pulling out a thick folder of documents. What kind of legal documents? I asked, my voice innocent. Nothing complicated, just a durable power of attorney, healthcare proxy, that sort of thing. Standard stuff Dad would want us to have in order. He slid a document toward me, pointing to a signature line at the bottom. If you'll just sign here, it gives me the ability to help manage your affairs if you ever can't do it yourself. I picked up the document, making a show of examining it. This seems very comprehensive. It says you would have the power to sell property, make financial decisions, even decide where I live. That's standard language, Bradley said quickly. It doesn't mean I would do any of those things unless absolutely necessary. And who determines when it's absolutely necessary? I asked, still keeping my tone conversational. Bradley shifted uncomfortably. Well, your doctors, of course, and me as your son, looking out for your best interests. I set the document down. And what about this other paperwork? There seems to be quite a lot here. Bradley leafed through the stack, pulling out another document. This one is just a transfer of deed, putting your house in both our names for estate planning purposes. It would save on inheritance taxes later. I see. I folded my hands in my lap. And does this have anything to do with the luxury condos you're planning to build here? The silence that followed was deafening. Bradley froze his face, draining of color. Jennifer's eyes widened in alarm. I don't know what you're talking about, Bradley stammered. Don't you? I reached for my phone and played the recording of his conversation from the week before. His voice filled the room. I can probably get $4 million for it, maybe more. The old house would have to be demolished, of course. Bradley's face flushed red. You were spying on me. No, Bradley. I was standing in my own home, overhearing you plot to sell it out from under me. Jennifer jumped in, her voice soothing. Vivian, you're misunderstanding. Bradley was just exploring options for the future, for after. After what, Jennifer? After you convinced me I was too incompetent to live alone. After you had me declared incapacitated. Or perhaps after you simply wore me down with constant pressure about my limitations until I gave in. The back door opened and Caroline and Emma walked in, their timing. Perfect as we'd planned. Bradley, Caroline said coolly. I thought I heard your voice, still trying to sell Mom's house before she's even moved out of it. Bradley stood up, anger replacing his initial shock. This is none of your business, Caroline. You abandoned Mom years ago to pursue your precious academic career. I'm the one who's been here checking on her, making sure she's okay. Making sure she's okay. Caroline's voice rose. You've been systematically undermining her confidence, trying to convince her and everyone else that she's incapable of independence. That's not true. Mom is forgetting things, getting confused. I've seen it myself. What have you seen exactly? I asked quietly, my voice cutting through their argument, that I sometimes misplace my reading glasses, that I occasionally forget an appointment. Show me a person of any age who doesn't do those things. I stood up my full height, still impressive, despite the years. What you've been doing, Bradley, is taking normal human behavior and pathologizing it. You've been looking for manufacturing evidence of decline to support your narrative. Mom, please. Bradley's voice took on a pleading tone. I'm just trying to look out for you. No, you're not. You're looking out for yourself. I gestured to the documents on the table. These papers would give you control over everything I own, combined with the narrative you've been creating about my supposed mental decline. You'd be perfectly positioned to sell my home and pocket the proceeds. That's a terrible thing to accuse me of, Bradley said, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. Is it? Emma spoke up, her young voice firm. Then why did you ask me to spy on Grandma? Why did you offer me something meaningful from her estate if I helped you? Bradley's head snapped toward Emma. I never said. Yes, you did. Emma pulled out her phone. And I recorded that conversation too. Jennifer stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. We came here to help, and we're being ambushed and accused of horrible things. The only horrible thing here, Caroline said, is what you two were planning to do to my mother. I raised my hand for silence, and to my surprise, everyone complied. In that moment, I felt a strength I hadn't fully acknowledged in years. The strength that had carried me through raising 2 children, supporting Howard through his academic career, and then his illness, and rebuilding my life after his death. Bradley, Jennifer, I want you to listen carefully. I said, my voice steady. I am not moving to Sunshine Meadows or any other facility. I am not signing power of attorney over to anyone. My home is now protected in an irrevocable trust with Caroline as trustee. Bradley's face contorted with anger and disbelief. You can't do that. I already have. The papers were signed and filed yesterday. I'll contest it. I'll have you evaluated. Prove you weren't competent to make that decision. I smiled slightly. You're welcome to try. But you should know that I've undergone comprehensive cognitive and physical evaluations this week. The results are quite clear about my competence. Additionally, every conversation we've had in this house over the past week has been legally recorded with proper notification. I pointed to the small sign near the security camera in the corner. Bradley followed my gaze, the blood draining from his face again as he spotted the camera. So, you see, I continued, your plan isn't going to work. This house will remain my home for as long as I choose. When I die many years from now, I hope it will pass to both my children equally, as Howard and I always intended. You've turned my own daughter against me, Bradley said bitterly, looking at Emma, and now you're turning my mother against me too. No, Bradley, I said softly. You did that yourself when you decided that my home, my autonomy, and my dignity were less important than a real estate opportunity. The room fell silent. Outside, waves continued their eternal rhythm against the shore. A seagull called life went on. Finally. Bradley gathered his papers with shaking hands, stuffing them back into his briefcase. This isn't over, he muttered, but the fight had gone out of his voice. Yes, it is, Caroline said firmly. Unless you want those recordings shared with the Florida Bar Association, attempting to defraud an elderly person, your own mother would certainly be of interest to your license. Jennifer tugged at Bradley's arm. Let's go, she whispered urgently. As they moved toward the door, I called out, Bradley! He turned his face a mask of anger and humiliation. You're still my son, I said quietly. When you're ready to have an honest relationship, one based on respect rather than deception, I'll be here. He said nothing. Just walked out the door with Jennifer close behind him. We heard their car start and the sound of tires on gravel as they drove away. Emma burst into tears and hugged me. Grandma, I'm so sorry. I can't believe Uncle Bradley would do something like this. I held her close, feeling her young heart beating against mine. People do desperate things sometimes, especially when money is involved. Caroline was watching me carefully. Are you okay, Mom? I considered the question. Was I okay? My son had tried to steal my home and freedom. The betrayal cut deep, deeper than I could express. And yet I will be. I said finally, right now I'm just grateful for you both and for the friends who helped me see the truth before it was too late. 1 year later, I still live in my beachfront home. The trust Caroline and I established ensures I always will for as long as I choose. I've made some modifications. Grab bars in the bathroom, a stair lift for days when my arthritis flares up, but they're on my terms to support my independence rather than surrender it. Caroline has taken a sabbatical from Berkeley and is renting a house just a few blocks away. She's writing a book on female autonomy in literature, and we have dinner together several times a week. Emma visits often, bringing friends from her marine biology program to sit on my porch and ask questions about how the coastline has changed over the decades. I still walk the beach every morning, sometimes alone, sometimes with new friends from my expanded social circle. I've joined the board of the local senior center, where I help organize programs focused on elder rights and financial protection. Diana Chen and I have become friends as well. She sometimes refers clients to me, older women, facing similar situations with family members, and I offer them what I've learned, that age doesn't diminish your right to self-determination, that vigilance is not paranoia, and that standing up for yourself is not selfish. As for Bradley, healing that relationship has been slower and more complicated. For months after our confrontation, he refused any contact. Then gradually text messages began stilted. At first, then increasingly remorseful as his anger gave way to shame. I learned through Caroline that his construction business had finally failed, forcing him into bankruptcy. Jennifer left him shortly after. He's starting over now. Working for another firm, living in a small apartment. 3 months ago, he asked if he could visit. When he arrived, he was thinner, humbler, the entitled confidence replaced by genuine contrition. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said simply, sitting on the porch swing where we'd spent so many evenings as a family. What I tried to do was unforgivable. "And yet, here we are," I replied, handing him a glass of iced tea, talking about forgiveness. Our relationship is rebuilding slowly on new foundations of honesty and respect. Bradley comes for dinner every other Sunday. Now, last week, he fixed my leaking kitchen faucet, a small gesture of atonement. This morning, as I walked along the shore at sunrise, I thought about what Howard would make of all this. I think he would be proud of how I fought for our home. For my dignity, I think he would be sad about Bradley's choices, but hopeful about his road to redemption. Most of all, I think he would recognize the woman he always saw in me, not defined by age or circumstance, but by courage and determination. The developers still circle occasionally. Property values in Gulf Shores continue to rise, and my little stretch of beachfront remains a tempting target. Last month, a sleek-suited man approached me directly with an offer. $7 million, he said confidently. For a woman in your position, that kind of financial security would be invaluable. I smiled at him, feeling the morning sun warm on my face, the sand solid beneath my feet. My position is perfect exactly where I am. I am Vivian Keller, 73 years old, and this is my home. No one will take it from me until I'm ready to leave it, and on that day, far in the future, it will be my choice. My decision made with clear eyes and full awareness of my own worth, because the most valuable property I own isn't this house or this beachfront, but the autonomy I've fought to preserve. That is my true legacy, and it is priceless.